everyone, in the lesson today, Unit 1, we are going to look at Old English literature. Do you think that the Old English language was similar to the English language we are using nowadays? Let's listen to Cadman Hymn by Cadman, the earliest known English poet, to see if you can understand the language.
Nu so long herjam hevond riches weird, mehr Todesmächte and his Morgefank. Wer kluger Feder so her wundra gewiss, etche drichten oron stjelde. I erst skeop gjelda bjernung, hevon to roffe helig skipend. The Middengerd Monkines weird, etche drichten efter tjode, fyrum foldan, fria and nichtig. Erst skeop gjelda bjernung, hevon to roffe helig skipend. The Middengerd Monkines weird, etche drichten efter tjode, fyrum foldan, fria en nichtig. Fyrum foldan, fria allmächtig.
As you can see, the Old English language is not like the modern one that we are using now. Let's look at the historical background of this period to explain why. So now, let's look at the objectives of the lesson. So after the lesson, you will gain some knowledge about the Old English literature, and you will be able to explain why Old English language was different from the modern one. You will gain some knowledge about the Song of Beowulf and be able to summarize and analyze the poem. The lesson is divided into 3 parts: historical background of the Old English literature, and the last one is the Song of Beowulf. And now, in the first part, we will look at historical background of the Old English literature. As you can see on the screen, we have pictures of the Celts. The land that we know as Britain originally belonged to the Celts, who had migrated from different parts of Europe such as Britain, Ireland, France, and Spain. There is no exact date when they settled there. And at that time, the Romans used to attack the Celts repeatedly because Rome was a dominant empire at that time because of their powerful military force. So after repeated attacks, Rome finally won over Britain in 43 AD. While Romans were ruling in Britain, Visigoths, who were the Germanic tribes, attacked Rome. The Romans had to leave Britain to save their home soil, Rome, from Visigoths. By 706 AD, all Roman legions had left Britain. So at that time, because the Romans had left Britain, England was in a very weak state and there was no army to protect them from the outside attack. As a result, by taking advantage of this, Picts and Scots attacked Britain. At this time, Germanic tribes, Anglo-Saxons and Jutes came to England to save England from Picts and Scots. Anglo-Saxons and Jutes first came from the desire to save England from the Picts and Scots. But because England was a favorable place to settle, they settled there. Although we know very little of this period from literature, some poems have nevertheless reached us. So as you can see in the table, you can see on the left side is the manuscript name, and the right side we have the content. For example, we have the excited book. It will be about riddles and algebra verses. In those early days, song called epics was created in many countries. The epics tell about the most remarkable events of people, history, and the deeds of one or more heroic personage. Anglo-Saxon literature incorporates prose, poetry, puzzle, maxims, and countless wisdom epigrams. The Anglo-Saxon period is known for wars and battles, so there's a writing of this era. Poems like the Battle of Maldon and the Battle of Brunanburh depict the various battles of that time. The themes of the Anglo-Saxon poetry were mostly war, invasion, and heroism. Trong thời kỳ này thì văn học của chúng ta đang ở trong một thời điểm mà diễn ra rất nhiều những cuộc chiến tranh và các cuộc giao tranh. Do đó, những chủ đề của văn học cũng thường về chiến tranh, xâm lược và về các người anh hùng. Okay, so the language of the Anglo-Saxon period is called Old English because the Old English language came from the language of Germanic tribes, Anglo-Saxon and Jutes. Therefore, most of the words of Old English literature are Germanic. Apart from this, the Latin language also had a powerful impact on the Old English language because of Latin-speaking Romans and because of priests and clergies who primarily had read and written texts in the Latin language. Later, the Vikings language also had a significant influence on the Old English language. By the end of the Anglo-Saxon period, the Old English language had been instituted as a language of Anglo-Saxon literature. Như vậy thì chúng ta có thể thấy ngôn ngữ tiếng Anh cổ sẽ là sự hòa hợp của rất nhiều những ngôn ngữ khác nhau và nó bị ảnh hưởng bởi không chỉ có ngôn ngữ của người Celt mà còn có sự ảnh hưởng của một số những bộ tộc German hoặc ngôn ngữ Latin. Đó là lý do tại sao khi chúng ta xem video ở đầu bài, chúng ta cảm thấy rất khó khăn trong việc hiểu được ngôn ngữ của thời kỳ này. Okay, so now this is the oldest example of Old English poetry. Notice the pronunciation. Do you think it sounds like English today?
Nu shullen herien, heaven riches weird, Methodus meachta and his modjathang. Werk wuldefider, swahe wundere je wes et shade richten, ora stelde. Hey eris chup, ilde bernum, heaven de rofa, highly shippened. The midan yered man kinnis weird, et shade richten after Theoda, firum folden, Freya almighty.
Now, let's move on to the next part about the poets of Old English literature. Let's start with Caedmon. He is known as the first known English poet. So Caedmon is still honored for his poetical paraphrases of the Holy Bible. And one more special thing about Caedmon, he was the author of Caedmon Hymn, the earliest known text of an English poem. So on the screen, you can see the Caedmon Hymn in Anglo-Saxon and a translation into modern English. Let's spend 1 or 2 minutes to look at that and compare the differences. So on the right, you can see this one is a book cover of Cy Wolf's works. The next poet of the lesson today is Cy Wolf. He was the author of 4 Old English poems preserved in late 10th century manuscripts. Elearn and the Faith of the Apostles are in the Versailles books, the Ascension, which form the second part of trilogy, Chris, and is also called Chris II, and Juliana are in the Excited book. In the lesson today, we will have a closer look at the Song of Beowulf. This is the most famous work of Old English literature. This is a heroic epic poem dated between the 8th and the early 11th century. It survives in a single manuscript known as the Norwell Codex. Unfortunately, the author is never known, and the author is anonymous. It was written down by a monk in the 10th century. So on the right, you can see a piece of the manuscript. Okay, so as you can see on the screen, we have a summary of Beowulf. The poem consists of 2 parts. The first part is about Beowulf's deeds when he is young. A monster named Grendel is threatening the kingdom of venerable King Hrothgar, king of the Danes. Beowulf, a young warrior with a group of comrades, come to the rescue. Beowulf fights Grendel hand to hand, and after a life or death wrestle, Beowulf overcomes the monster. Grendel's mother, also a monster, is determined to revenge her son's death. Beowulf meets her at the bottom of a deep lake. A terrible fight takes place when Beowulf is about to succumb to the fury of her attack. He catches hold of a huge magic sword that helps him get rid of the water witch. The second part of the poem is about the deeds of Beowulf when he is king of Norway. In the 50th year of his reign, there appears a fire-breathing dragon which ravaged the peaceful countryside. Beowulf, white with age, comes to the battle again. He kills the dragon, but he himself is fatally wounded. Finally, he is buried by the sea. Sau đây chúng ta sẽ xem lại tóm tắt của tác phẩm Beowulf, và khi xem clip thì các bạn chú ý ghi chép lại những chi tiết chính trong câu chuyện.
Beowulf is the first surviving epic written in the English language, though its author remains mysterious. The circumstances of the poem's creation are hotly debated by scholars. Many also believe the story was conveyed orally before it took the form of a manuscript, since the only existing copy dates back to the late 10th century. Originally composed in Old English, the epic draws from early Germanic legend and is set in pagan Scandinavia. It recounts the saga of Beowulf, a Geat warrior who defends the Danish kingdom and then his own from various bloodthirsty monsters. The poem opens on Hrothgar, the king of the Danes, who plans to celebrate his reign by building a grand hall called Heorot. When the hall is finished, Hrothgar holds a large feast that attracts the attention of Grendel, a monster descended from the biblical Cain. Grendel attacks during the night, leaving Hrothgar and his thanes to discover the bloodshed the next morning. This marks the beginning of Grendel's reign of terror. 12 years pass, and news of Grendel's campaign against the Danes spreads to another tribe, the Geats. Beowulf, a Geat thane, decides to help the Danes, sailing to Denmark with his best warriors. King Hrothgar gladly accepts Beowulf's help. To honor Beowulf's arrival, Hrothgar holds another feast at Heorot. During the celebration, a thane named Unferth engages Beowulf in a boasting match, accusing him of losing a swimming contest. But Beowulf corrects him with a story of his heroic victory in the contest, prompting the Danish queen, Walstheo, to award him the ceremonial mead cup. Beowulf tells the queen he will either kill Grendel or be killed. Hrothgar is moved and promises Beowulf all of his gold if Beowulf should defeat the monster. Beowulf and his warriors spend the night in Heorot. Sure enough, Grendel arrives, gobbling up one of Beowulf's men. Beowulf fights Grendel unarmed, managing to catch the monster's arm in a death grip. Writhing in pain, the monster tears away, leaving his arm in Beowulf's grasp. Grendel slinks off to his lair, where he dies. Overjoyed at the defeat of Grendel, the Danes nail the creature's arm to the walls of Heorot as a trophy, bathing Beowulf and his men in riches. They hold another feast for Beowulf, where Hrothgar's minstrel composes songs honoring Beowulf as the greatest hero in Danish history. However, once the revelers are asleep, Grendel's mother arrives, seeking revenge. She manages to snatch one of Hrothgar's counselors and retreats to her lair. Hrothgar points Beowulf in the direction of the monster's lair, and Beowulf persuades the king to accompany him there. Upon arriving, Beowulf takes a sword from Unferth and dives into a deep lake. When he reaches the bottom, Beowulf finds Grendel's mother waiting to attack. He uses Unferth's sword, but finds it useless against the creature, and wrestles with the monster until he spots another sword, which he uses to slice off Grendel's mother's head. Before leaving, he notices Grendel's dead body and cuts off his head too. Meanwhile, the Danes have given up all hope of Beowulf's safe return. But to their shock, Beowulf surfaces carrying Grendel's head and the hilt of his sword, which melted in the heat of Grendel's blood. The men bring Beowulf back to Heorot, where yet another celebration takes place. Before returning home to Geatland, Beowulf promises an alliance with Hrothgar forever, which the king gratefully reciprocates. Beowulf and his men return home, regaling the great king and queen, Hygelac and Hed, with tales of their victory. Impressed with Beowulf's bravery, Hygelac gives him half the kingdom. When Hygelac is killed in battle, Beowulf becomes king of the Geats. In the 50th year of Beowulf's reign, a new monster begins to terrorize his kingdom. A fire-breathing dragon seeking revenge on a Geat servant who stole a golden cup from its lair, which houses an ancient treasure trove. Finding the cup missing, the dragon goes on a fiery rampage, destroying Beowulf's great hall. With a heavy heart, Beowulf decides to face the dragon alone, knowing this battle may be his last. The servant who stole the cup leads him to the dragon's lair, where Beowulf attempts to defeat the beast, but is outmatched. All of his warriors flee except one, Wiglaf, who vows to stay by Beowulf's side. Together, they face the dragon. But just as Beowulf manages to behead the monster, the dragon bites him, sending a lethal poison through his body. With his dying breath, Beowulf tells Wiglaf that he should inherit the dragon's treasure. Wiglaf returns to the Geats with the news of their king's death, declaring that no one should inherit the treasure, and scolding the warriors who fled for their cowardice. Throwing the monster's body into the sea, the Geats place the treasure trove inside Beowulf's funeral mound, mourning the ablest of all world kings.
Vậy thì như chúng ta vừa bàn luận, Beowulf chính là một hình ảnh tượng đài của văn học Anh cổ. It is not only a fairy tale of monsters and dragons. It is a picture of the social life of primitive Old English periods. To fight courageously, to eat and drink well, and to be soothed by music after the day's labor and then to sleep. Tác phẩm đã nói lên một số đặc điểm của thời kỳ văn học Anh cổ. Ví dụ như về những người anh hùng chiến đấu, về cách mà người dân có thể ăn, uống và sinh hoạt trong thời điểm này, cũng như cách mà người dân thư giãn sau một ngày làm việc bằng âm nhạc. And now we will have a closer look at the character Beowulf. So when you look at the summary and read the story, you will see that Beowulf is a man of few words. He was brave and loyal. But at the same time, he was also cruel and implacable. He was the early model of English courage and nobility. One more thing that we can comment from the story is that the scenic background is well suited for such men. It is black and cold, and the rough and rugged land is swept by the storms. There is no sentiment, no tenderness to relieve the gloom. Okay, khi chúng ta nhìn vào bối cảnh lịch sử của thời kỳ này thì chúng ta có thể thấy thời kỳ này là một thời kỳ khó khăn với môi trường thiên nhiên vô cùng khắc nghiệt đối với con người. Do đó con người cần phải mạnh mẽ hơn và chiến đấu mãnh liệt hơn. Và Beowulf thì là một nhân vật đã thể hiện cho những cái tính cách rất là đặc trưng của thời kỳ này. Ví dụ như là anh ta rất là kiệm lời, nhưng đồng thời cũng rất là dũng cảm và đôi khi là mang tính chất hơi tàn bạo. Now we will discuss about the writing style of the Song of Beowulf. As the Song of Beowulf is written in Old English literature, it is harder for everyone to analyze the writing style. However, there are three main points that you need to remember. Okay, so first of all, it is a classical example of Anglo-Saxon poetry, and it was written in alliteration. Okay, so what does this mean by alliteration? It is a repetition of the first consonant of different syllables in a line or verse. The repetition of the consonant T in the following line, like 12 winters, time tortoise. I will also introduce some key facts about the Song of Beowulf. First thing you need to remember the type of the work. It is a poem. What about the genre? Alliterative verse, elegy, and it resembles heroic epics. What about the language? Of course, it is written in Old English. What about the time and place? The poem was written. Estimates of the date of the composition range between 700 and 1000 AD, written in England. A Christian narrator telling a story of pagan times. Now, let's discuss about the points of view. The narrator recounts the story in the third person from a generally objective standpoint, detailing the action that occurs. Như vậy thì chúng ta vừa nhìn lại một số những điểm chính và một số những thông tin quan trọng về tác phẩm The Song of Beowulf. To continue, I will introduce more about the tone. The poet is generally enthusiastic about Beowulf's feats, but he often surrounds the events he narrates with a sense of doom. Okay, let's discuss about the setting. What do you think about the setting of the poem? The time? The main action of the story is set around 500 AD. The narrative also recounts historical events that happened much earlier. What about the date? It was the time that Denmark and Jutland origin in what is now southern Sweden. Okay, and the main characters of this story is, of course, Beowulf. What about the theme? The importance of establishing identity and tensions between the heroic code and other value system, the difference between a good warrior and a good king. Okay, so now let's look at the summary of the lesson. This lesson covers some main points below. First of all, the context of the Old English period. The second, Old English language. Some famous poets of the age. A summary of the Song of Beowulf, and finally, an analysis of the Song of Beowulf. Okay, so this is the end of the lesson. Remember to finish all the homework and assignments, and see you in the next lesson.